if you want the truth, I'm not 100% convinced everyone needs it. I think what everyone's looking for a silver bullet, right? It's like there's one thing that will improve everything on my site and I'll make loads more money. But it kind of depends on your customer base and your traffic. So
Hello, and welcome to Cracking Commerce, where we crack down on everything that makes e commerce complex and help e commerce teams keep their sanity in check. I'm your host, Maria, and today we are joined by Izaac Barratt from BS Devshop to talk about site speed issues in Shopify and crack down on all the myths and bad practices in this domain. Hello, Izaac. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, feel nice. Can't complain.
I'm really looking forward to diving into this topic and cracking down on one of the biggest and most common pain points for Shopify merchants. But before we get into the heavy stuff, I want to know how you got to BS Dev Shop. What were you doing before? And what is BS Dev Shop all about?
Okay, so BS Devshop is a development agency for Shopify. We help e-commerce, anything related to the whole development pipeline, technical. That's what we do. I started by complete accident, actually. My dad was very into like publication and media. So as a kid, I kind of grew up around a bunch of technology, and I think he was subscribed to a magazine that gave him an animation software or something like that. I remember I tried it at 12, and animation kind of became a pipeline to programming because I was interested in games at the time, obviously being 12 years old, and it just kind of escalated from there. I got a bit older, and one of my friends, I think around the age of 16, 17, was quite entrepreneurial minded, and he was a designer. So he's like, look, you can code, I can design. Why don't we build stuff? Why don't we sell it? So we started our first agency. Things went on. I ended up getting proper jobs because obviously, as a 17-year-old, the agency is probably not going to work. And then I think I got started in e-commerce with Pretty Little Thing, which our side of the world, it was a pretty big company when I was there. I think they were doing 500 million a year, and they had a whole bespoke e-com system. So their thing was like the checkout was all theirs, the payment gateways, they like team of 50 engineers. So that was kind of interesting. I ended up getting promoted and running their checkout team, so handling all of that stuff. And then after that, became CTO of a startup that was doing something similar and trying to build their own checkout system. So I think we raised 175,000, moved to London with them. And then after that, I went into contracting. Again, all e-commerce related. I think the notable thing was with Wyndham and Thompson, I helped them build out their proprietary e-com platform for all their clients. Again, the payment gateway stuff because of my Pretty Little Thing experience. And now it is Shopify specific BS Dev Shop.
Wow, interesting. So, from all of your experience with custom, you went into Shopify. Why that transition? What you saw in the industry?
Yeah, well, it's you have to be honest about where you're at and what skills you have. So, in my head, I actually arrogantly I thought I was above Shopify. I was like, oh, I've done all this custom bespoke stuff. But then, like, if you think about having to sell a custom bespoke project, it's like multiple hundreds of thousands. You need a team of 20 people. Like, I don't have any sales experience. So it's like, do you want to start an agency at like only speaking to nine-figure brands? Like, it's just not feasible. Well, for me, it wasn't. And then the one thing everyone always used to ask me is like, "Oh, can you do Shopify sites?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I can," but like, And then it kept happening, and I was like, "Right, you know what? Maybe there's something here. I think if a lot of people are asking for it, then there's, you know." And yeah, there seems to definitely be a lot of market demand for it.
Right, that's very entrepreneurial. Nice that you stepped out of your from that technological person who likes to sell tech custom stuff all the time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. 100. No, yeah. It's you have to be where people are at.
Be business first, technology second. When we talk about CRO services, most people think of it as a set of A/B tests. They sell CRO services as a package of X number of tests. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's fair because it's sort of rudimentary to say, oh, we'll do X amount of tests per month, right? But you need to anchor your price to something. So it's like I can't say, hey, I'll do CRO, and they go, oh, okay, what do I get? and I can't just be like, oh, like I have to say, this is what we deliver every month. There's got to be a cadence. So I think it's fair. I have seen agencies that say, they don't really say what they'll do test wise, but they're like, we'll increase your conversion by 3% over 6 months. And I think that's probably a pretty good hook. But equally, they won't offer that to everyone, right? They'll say that, they'll do an audit, and it's like, if your website is terrible, it's like, oh, you guys don't even have like an add to cart button. Yeah, we 100% we can do that. But if you're like industry standard conversion rate, you can't really offer free work for 6 months on, a gamble like that. So I think, yeah, you've got to anchor it. It's fair.
So, is there more to CRO? Like you're looking at it from a holistic perspective, from an experience point of view, than just finding things to test and just running the test. So, is there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, like we just said earlier with selling though, it's like there's only as much, you can only bring as much to it as the client wants. If a client's like, oh, I want more conversions, and I try and talk, or you can use the data to improve all of the functions of your website, like, people that aren't interested in that are just going to turn off, and it's a waste of time. But for sure, CRO really is a way. If you're an e-commerce brand and you think of your website as your main interface with the rest of the world, it's like your way of understanding and validating your customers a little bit more. So if you think of it as A/B tests, as being able to test hypotheses, like we think a customer will respond differently if we do something, you're actually learning more about your customer. So yes, the byproduct is you might get more or less sales, but that actually tells you about what your customer wants in the way they want it. And using that over time, you piece together bigger insights, and then that's where the big wins come, because you'll maybe roll out a more specific product or feature or something, if that makes sense. Obviously, you can't just go for the conversion stuff, but I like to think a little bit more holistically.
Before we get into the technical stuff, I have a question for you. Is site speed a big major point for Shopify merchants? And what is the trend you're seeing as you talk to clients?
If you want the truth, I'm not 100% convinced everyone needs it. I think what everyone's looking for, a silver bullet, right? It's like there's one thing that will improve everything on my site and I'll make loads more money. But it kind of depends on your customer base and your traffic. So if you have a high impulse purchase, so it's like if all your traffic comes from meta ads when people are mid scroll and you don't sell a differentiated product, it's like print t-shirts, you need it to be fast because it's all impulse based. People aren't thinking. And if you take them out of the flow, you might have just lost the sale. If you sell mattresses, which, how many times do you buy a mattress? Like maybe once a decade. If I am on a mattress website, I've given myself an hour. I'm like, right, today is mattress day. I need to fix this. And site speed's not going to be as much of an issue. Obviously, the better you present, the better you look. So if I go on site, it is really clunky and slow, I'd probably rather be somewhere else. But I'd say definitely, unless it's noticeably slow and it's annoying yourself and the team, it's probably not that bad unless what you sell needs to be quick based on your audience. That's my opinion. I would say caveat what I previously said with, like, how slow is it compared to others. You can use things like Google page speed insights and check the scores and stuff like that. I would say go by industry benchmarks, generally speaking. I think unless you really know it's a problem, don't expect it to fix everything else. That's what I'd say. I wish I could be more specific, but it really is case by case.
Yeah, so yeah, that is very valuable because unless you see there is a problem, don't try to fix it. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean,
There's so many problems. Like, why this one? Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's a million things, like, plenty to do.
yeah. Do you think people are getting obsessed with paid speed insight? Because I see like marketers here, when something is not working, they're not getting sales, they go on paid speed insights. Oh, the problem is this A score, the B score, the C score. We are not, our site is not fast enough. We need to get it optimized. So they're bringing all these requests.
Yeah, like, are people just using it as clickbait? Not always, because I think it is something that can make quite a difference, especially if there's a speed problem, and if bringing someone's attention to an actual metric. Because if I say, is your site slow, what does that really mean? If I say, oh, it's scored 60 on this thing, everyone understands exactly where they are. So I think it is useful to benchmark people and say, hey, this is the problem. Um, but I also think when you sell services to people, you have to meet them where they're at, right? Like if someone says like, oh, I can't sell anything because of my site speed, and I do an audit of the site and I think it's not your speed, if they're adamant, it's like, look, I'll do you speed, but I can also do this as well. Like, you have to sort of frame it in a way they get what they want, or it's like, oh, I can make it faster in a different way, but it's actually something sort of different. So I think you have to, if you want to get results, and especially if you want to build case studies off results, sometimes you do have to dangle the carrot of what they think is actually going to move the needle. So you can kind of show them, look, now that we've tested and done this data, you can actually see this thing needs improving. Like, thoughts on this. So it doesn't always work, but I'd say I think a lot of marketers initially sort of use it to draw people in to then make real transformation, or at least that's what it appears like to me.
People are talking about speed and Shopify. So is that a problem? And if so, why is speed an issue with Shopify stores?
I've never heard anyone complain about Shopify's base theme. You know what I mean? It's like if you work the way Shopify wants you to work, it's rarely a problem. I think you can do faster with, I've seen some headless builds with like Next that like on the front end were really quick because they use different technologies, but it's like Shopify is pretty good if you do what it's supposed to do. I think its strength is also its weakness in that it's very customizable. So there's a lot of apps, there's a lot of people building different things on top of it. And because of that, it's like you have a lot of things on the website that are competing for resource. And you've got a bunch of different things different people have built. It's not orchestrated and organized. It just ends up becoming a mess. And then, of course, it's slow because you've got 20 different apps that are all trying to be the first thing that loads the moment a user jumps on the page. So of course, it's going to take ages. And Shopify can't really even fix that, right? It's like, what do they do? Stop people building apps?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, that would ruin the ecosystem.
And there's some great apps out there, it's like, but you can't, yeah, you can't just buy a bunch of random parts that aren't supposed to fit together and then expect like, a Porsche.
Yeah, true. I think that's a problem with every platform you build a custom one, or you go to any platform. If you install all these different third party apps, it's going to slow down, and you have to then go into optimization stuff. So I was talking about this exact thing about another developer, and also realized that there is a consensus out there that Shopify takes care of speed issues by itself. So what are your thoughts on it?
It does in a lot of ways. Like it's all the way you're supposed to use the majority of the cart logic and the way the page loads when it first loads is like it's all done on the server. Do I get too technical? Like I don't know what level. Yeah, so it's like it's a lot of that's like server side rendered, which means the client doesn't render it, which generally means it's faster because they'll be using better computers to run this stuff. And then also they partner with I can't remember if they partnered or they bought something from Cloudflare, but Cloudflare is one of the big CDNs for serving images and assets anyway. So it's like if you were going to use Cloudflare, Shopify already does that off the bat. Um, so I think Shopify does the basic stuff to be honest. So it's like if you again the Dawn theme, no one complains about that because it's built primarily CSS, HTML, and then they took an approach where it's like you do as much as you can without JavaScript to minimize the amount of it. But it just means that things end up loading faster. There's less execution time, and it works great. But the problem comes from when all these apps and all the different things you add to it, and not even maybe trying to avoid using Liquid, which is Shopify's language, and it can be difficult because it's all server side. So making updates and responding to like user interaction can be tricky, but you still need to try and work with their system because if you don't work with their system, you're still on their platform. That's when you're going to get issues with load speed.
My next question is headless the answer to site speed?
Maybe it's difficult because you are basically building your own platform. So it's like the question is, do you think you can build something better for you than Shopify?
Mm,
Maybe you can if you've got a very specific use case and you've got a sick team, but again, very often it's like the main problems probably aren't from the actual like network and hosting of Shopify. It's all the other stuff you have on top of it. And the big thing with going headless
mm.
as well is like there's no apps you can integrate. You have to build everything yourself. It's not just the visual front end. Um, yeah, I guess is what's your appetite? What's your budget? It's definitely possible, and there's some amazing headless builds out there. But you would
Hmm.
probably be better served finding the things that are the most taxing on your website. So you know, with using Google PageSpeed Insights and other analytics tools, you can even just use the network like inspection on your browser. You can kind of see the things that are taking ages to load, and they're probably going to be some apps or something. could you build like a, your own version of this app that, or find an alternative to this app which is just going to be much faster. And I would always recommend starting with what are the things that we know are causing the site speed, and experiment by
Hmm.
incrementally doing things. Because again, I think people use it as a silver bullet in the sense of like, oh, we'll go headless. It's like a big refresh. Like, we don't
Yeah.
have to do all the boring maintenance work. We get a new site. You do, but there will be months of like, even if you get the website done in like a month, okay, what about all the
Hmm.
apps and all the integrations and accounts? It's like, if you use Revo for
Yeah.
your accounts, how are you gonna plug that into a custom site? Did they have their own customer portal? Oh, okay. And did they have APIs to integrate with? So it's definitely doable, and
Yeah.
if you do it
Yeah.
well, it will work out amazing. But it's quite the undertaking. But that's the beauty of Shopify. The whole reason you're on it is it's someone else's job. Like, I sell my products. Okay, I have to design certain things, but it's like someone's job is to make sure the network's always running and the images are served quickly. Like, that's someone's whole thing. And it's like, the more, and again with the apps, it's like, okay, I pay this much a month, but it means it's someone's job to make sure my reviews always come in, and they always, they're formatted a certain way. It's like, headless is just taking the jobs on yourself. If you think you can do better, great, but that's what it is. And engineers will always push for it because, frankly, it's more fun. As an engineer myself, I'll admit I would much rather build custom stuff. But as someone that has to run a business and sell things, it's like we're wasting everyone's time. That's what I feel.
You talked about building an API layer for third-party services in Shopify. Can you break this down and explain in layman terms what you meant?
The video you referenced it, I was saying, yeah, if you were about to do a headless build, I'm just a fan of starting incrementally, man. Like, what are the things that are causing the real speed issues? And it's like, can you not start with those? The reason I also suggest this is I got this from a guy called Sam Zell, who was, rest in peace, a big real estate guy in New York. And his thing was like, we only do a deal if the downside is negligible. So he's like, if we buy all this land because we want to build something, if for some reason we can't build, like, is the land itself about as valuable as we paid? What's the loss? And I think that with systems as well. And it's like, if you were going to go headless, you would have to build out all your apps and all these expensive things anyway. So it's like, why not start with that and see if it fixes the problem? Because you might have saved yourself, a lot on the back end. So I just meant an API layer is, I think the big problem with apps as well, again, is it's not that they're necessarily built badly, it's that they're not synchronized. So if when someone lands on the website, there's like events that your browser calls. So it's like, page landed, document loaded, different things. And you have to basically schedule yourself as the code when you want to be executed. The problem is, if everyone is trying to execute the code at the beginning of the site, 'cause it's going to make your app perform better, it just makes it really bulky and it's not synchronized. So a big problem with page load isn't necessarily how long all the elements take, it's how they're queued. So, if something takes half a second to load and you've got 10 things, if they all try and load at the exact same time, you've got a 5 second load period. So it's like, by building out your own layers, just synchronizing it, even if you change nothing else, just like actually deciding what your priority was as a website, what you want to load, what you want the user to see, can be a night and day difference. So I always recommend people start with third party stuff.
So, if they do that, what would be the associated cost, timeline, and what would be the impact in terms of site speed?
I mean, you can get APIs running pretty quick. All the optimization stuff people talk about doing with Next, you can do similar things with APIs. It just wouldn't be as noticeable because it's like on the back end and tends to be a bit like smaller size. But like, let's say you've got three services that are all taking like a second to load, and you see that loading on the page. If you could reduce those all to being like, I don't know, like half a second, like quarter of a second, it's difficult to estimate costs. I'm trying to think how you do that. I guess it depends on the service you're building, and if you have the engineers in house as well. If you are doing some sort of API layer, you have an in-house dev. Like, don't rely on someone else, because the great thing about apps as well is that, again, it's someone else's problem, and you can call support. If you don't have anyone internal that can do that, and you build this whole API layer, it's like, now you have an app. Okay, it's more performant, but you're on your own. So yeah, it's difficult to know cost based on what you're building, but I would just say it's like, it is a maintenance job as well. One of the costs is you have to be on top of it.
That's true. It would, increase the cost, not just of development but also maintenance. So you do need to have a in-house developer. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense that if you're thinking about headless, why not just start with the API layer, build all the third-party functionality in-house, and maybe if it solves the problem, then you don't have to go to the headless route. Because even if you go headless, you'll need that in-house developer anyway,
Right.
maybe even
100%.
couple of them.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You have to learn a whole new
Yeah.
CMS. It's like people are, oh, we build on this thing. It's like, okay, great. So now I need
Yeah.
just more things that can
Yeah.
break.
And all the fresh graduates that are coming from the engineering universities, they don't want to do frameworks, they don't want to do these CMSs, they want to do the exciting stuff. I want to build AI.
This is why jobs are getting tougher for people as well, because it's like, you're either top end of the spectrum and you're actually helping build and develop these new AI models and it's cutting edge, or you need to figure out a way to do work quicker, because because the competition now isn't necessarily technical competence. It's like, do things look the way they should and are they delivered at speed? So it's like, trying to do frameworks is.
If what you have shared above solves the problem of site speed, is headless really necessary, or is it more of a buzzword right now? And do brands ever need it, or does it become a nuisance for marketing?
Oh, would you mean as in a nuisance for marketers? Like,
I feel like I was working with a headless system, and I was trying to install a tag manager script, and it just wouldn't install on the Next.js side. I don't know what was the problem. We inspected the page source, the code wasn't there, and it was such a mess. And I'm used to using WordPress, where it's just like you know a 5-minute job. So with that headless system, it became a 4-hour job.
well, this is the thing. It's like, I think a lot of the headless argument is spearheaded by engineering, and the benefit is engineering gets more control, but at the cost of everyone else's control, generally speaking. Yeah, look, headless is great as an investment. If you're reaching that multi 8 figure stage and you're like, look, I think this company's really going to the moon. I want to bring it all in house and have control. And the systems we want to build will be more specific for us and we can do that. That's great. But it's like, these are all the little things that pop up. So it's like, you need a whole engineering team really if you're doing headless, because instead of you setting that up, you need a department where it's like, hey, I need this setup. And it's a thing that we now build. It's not a thing that you click and drop. So I think as an investment, it's fine. It's not a thing you do and then leave it. It's not like Shopify where you
Yeah.
set up a theme and get some apps and then it's like kind of okay. Like, you can have one dev managing the whole site and
Yeah.
all the apps. Headless, there's just too many things that can break.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
too many. And now as well, it's like the kind of experience you're looking for. It's like you now need engineers that do different things. So it's like you might actually need a data guy now,
Yeah.
because if they're integrating all the tags and making sure the analytics comes through, whereas Shopify like just does that for you. So it's an investment. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. So brands need to think about, if they need it. And I think that's a very good point about starting incrementally and experimenting with the API layer. First, build all the third-party services, and then if the problem gets solved, then why fix it? Why fix a problem that doesn't exist? And
Well,
then,
the big brands have to as well. So when I was working at Pretty Little Thing, the original reason that there was like a space in the leadership position above me is because they were expanding out the team, because they were originally on Magento
okay.
and they were beginning to leave it. And the way they did that is they built out the checkout as like a standalone website. So
Hmm.
the normal website's fine, but then the traffic goes here,
Okay.
and that's how you do like the conversion event. But it's like using these, like, you'd have to do that anyway if you're going to re-platform, but it's like
Mhm.
starting bit by bit, and you just need to do it at a certain level. And I think people probably jump the gun a little bit.
That's true. Okay. Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. So, where can people find you and get in touch with you?
I'm probably most active on my LinkedIn, which is Isaac Barratt. It's my name. And then the website is bs-devshop.com. We work incredibly fast. We turn websites over in 20 days. We do site speed optimization and we do CRO.
Okay, perfect, Isaac. Isaac, I think I pronounced it wrong.
No, no, Eddie. Yep, either way. I like both.
Okay. Thanks for joining us today and sharing so much value. Have a good day.